I met Mohit when I stopped at that dingy gas station, half a kilometer south of the last town. He was a jolly fellow, in his late 20s. The next town was nearly 50 miles away and he was in dire need of a lift and offered to pay half of my gas bill. He looked like a decent guy, and I was short on cash. So, I thought, why not? He immediately struck up a conversation with me. He told me that he worked at a firm a couple of towns away, and he traveled about once a month to meet his girlfriend. Soon, the conversation was in full flow, twisting and turning around various topics, just like the bends on the road. He was an avid reader, a die-hard cricket fan, and madly passionate about movies, just like me. Suddenly, with another sharp twist in the road, my headlight fell on a shabbily dressed man, standing about 100 meters down the road, waving wildly for a lift. I had almost applied the brakes, when Mohit said, in a very serious tone, "Dude, what are you doing? Didn't you hear the news? Keep going. Do not stop." Something in his voice made me hit the gas pedal instead of brakes. I saw the silhouette of the hitchhiker whirring past us, as I sped full throttle. Soon, he was nothing but a distant shadow in the rearview mirror. My grip on the steering relaxed a bit. I turned towards Mohit. His face was still white, his expression ghastly. "Dude, relax, and what fucking news are you talking about?" I shot at him, uneasily. There was still a tinge of fear in his tone when he replied, "Dude, I just read it today. This 30 kilometers stretch that we are on right now is very infamous for a serial killer who lurks here after dark. There have been 3 murders in the past couple of months. The reports say that he pretends to be a hitchhiker and signals passing cars for a lift. If they are stupid enough to stop and let him in," he let his words hang. Then, he pulled out his cell, Googled something, and then shoved it in my face. What I saw sent chills up and down my spine. A few pics, one of a girl, her head smashed in with what could only have been a crowbar, her neck bent at a very strange angle, another one of a couple, both stabbed multiple times in the heart and again, their necks are broken, blood splattered everywhere, the corpses still left in the car to rot. As I scrolled through the pictures, the realization now hit me with full force. I already had a hitchhiker in the car. I looked up from the phone. Mohit was staring at me. His expression had changed. Gone was the ghastly expression. There was a sudden gleam in his eyes, a gleam that only comes from knowledge of how the future is about to unfold. "This is it. This is how it's going to end. Maybe I should stall?" I uttered, slowly, "But why hasn't the police been able to catch him, this killer? Apparently, he's been doing it for a couple of months now. He has a pretty obvious modus operandi. Pretending to be a hitchhiker, flagging down cars, and gutting their owners. He must live somewhere close." Mohit replied, "Don't know." His tone was neutral, dangerously so. I had to act confident. I looked directly into his eyes. "I have a theory. Would you like to hear it?" He stared back at me. By now, we both knew that this was just wordplay. Soon it would end and then, the real horror would begin. We both realized that there was no escape from it. And we both had made peace with it. I knew I had. "Sure, go ahead," he smiled. "Maybe the reason police haven't been able to catch this serial killer is because they have got it all wrong. Maybe, the killer is not the hitchhiker. Maybe he is the driver. The killer steals a car and drives along this road. When he sees anyone stranded on the roadside, he offers them lift. And once they get into the car." In one swift motion, I took out the dagger hidden carefully beside my seat and plunged it right into his heart. He gasped, his eyes wide in shock. Then slowly, I twisted the dagger. I felt the life draining from his body, which was still convulsing violently. Once again, I felt that power, surging through my veins. The same power I had felt, when I had mutilated the half-dead bodies of that girl, and that married couple. The power that made me God, that destroyer. I smiled in satisfaction. This one was not like the others. When I saw the change in his expression earlier, the gleam in his eyes, I knew he had understood who I was. Pretty intuitive, eh? But somehow, that made it even more fun to play with him before gutting him. Poor Mohit. Trapped like a rat who knows the cat is just playing with it before going for the kill. I slowed down the car and parked it on the roadside. It was pitch black. I got out and carefully shifted Mohit's, now lifeless body to the driver's side. Then I wrapped my ice-cold fingers around his limp neck. As my hand jerked, I heard a crunching sound. It was the sound of a neck snapping. And that sound was music. It was symphony. It was the trumpet of the gods.
It was a rainy Saturday night. I was out in a restaurant with some friends having a great time. It was almost midnight and we had to leave. We came out, said our goodbyes, and I walked towards my car. I got in and started driving towards my home. I had a long day and was really tired. It was about an hour's drive to my house. On my way, I started to feel sleepy, so I turned on the radio to keep me awake. But there was some problem with the radio. All I could hear was static. I was checking the radio when suddenly, I saw someone standing straight ahead in the middle of the road. I severed left and applied the brakes hard. The car screeched to a stop. I got out of the car to check, but there was no one there. I looked around where I saw the person standing, but there was no one to be seen around. No person, no tire marks, no indication that anything happened. I thought that my mind was playing tricks on me. I was just really sleepy. I went back to my car, checked the car, everything seemed to be working, except the radio. I was a little shaky after that incident and went on to drive slowly towards my home. I reached home at 1 a.m. Just as I got in, my phone rang. It was Andy, one of the friends with whom I was having dinner earlier tonight. He sounded worried and he said that he was calling to check that I reached home safely or not. I told him that I was okay and asked what the matter was. He sounded confused and scared. He told me that while driving home, on the way he saw a guy who looked just like me standing there in the middle of the road. He thought that he had hit me with his car, but when he went out to see, there was no one there. That was very weird. I said that even I experienced the same thing. He said that he had called the other two friends too, and even they saw something similar. He started to panic. I told him not to think about it too much right now and just go to bed. We'll figure this out tomorrow. After the call, I took a nice hot shower and then went to bed. The next morning the four of us had decided to meet at the same restaurant and discuss the events of last night. I reached there early only to see that the restaurant had been burned down to the ground. The entire place had just been completely destroyed by the fire. There were paramedics and firemen checking for any survivors and trying to get the dead bodies out. I saw an onlooker standing at the side of the road and went up to him to ask what had happened there. He told that there was a fire last night, a big one. No one survived, all the people were trapped inside the building. No one could call the fire department as all the phone lines were destroyed. The fire engines and the paramedics came in the morning when everyone was already dead. I felt that was very strange as we had just had dinner there last night. I went towards the road to wait for my friends. As I was going, I saw one of the paramedics taking a dead body out. It was charred, but somehow, the face looked familiar. I looked closer and then I remembered where I had seen him. I was talking to him a couple of minutes ago. I turned back to see, but he was gone. I started freaking out, thinking, what did I really see, a ghost? The paramedic placed the dead body next to another one. Coincidentally, it also looked familiar. To my surprise, this was the person I had seen last night. The one I thought that I almost hit with my car. But from his wounds, it looked like he had died there in the fire too. My head was starting to spin. What was going on? It was as if suddenly I was seeing ghosts everywhere. By this time, my friend Andy reached there too and was shocked to see the place burned down. How is that even possible? He said, we were almost the last ones out of here and the owner said that they had to close the place. Yeah, I know. It is all very weird. This place burning down and me suddenly seeing ghosts everywhere. What ghosts? Andy asked. I told him about the dead bodies lying there and how I had seen the same guy last night and then today morning too. That is strange, Andy said. I did not see any ghost, but I remember seeing you last night in front of my car. Just as he spoke those words, I saw the paramedics carry out 4 more bodies, Andy, me, and our 2 other friends. All 4 were burned. I looked at Andy, then at my burned and lifeless body, being carried away right in front of my eyes.
My family used to rent a house in town along with my aunt and uncle when I was very young that we eventually moved out of because of very strange things that happened while we lived there, but the most memorable and final straw was the night my aunt was using the toilet and just happened to look down at this small hole in the floor that had been there since we moved in and saw a man standing in the basement looking right back up at her smiling. My aunt ran out of the bathroom and screamed for my uncle. After explaining to him that there was a man in the basement, my uncle went and got my dad and they both went down the stairs, the only entrance into the basement, where they found nothing but footprints in the dirty floor where someone had been standing and moving around under the hole.
When I was growing up, my little brother, who was 3 at the time, used to sleepwalk through our house at night. He'd walk down to the basement where I slept and crack open my door between 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. He'd then slowly push it open and shuffle inside. When I'd ask what he was doing, he'd always stare at the floor and say, "Where's Mom?" I'd tell him that she was upstairs. He would repeat, "Where's Mom?" Each night I would take him back upstairs and lead him back to bed where he'd fall asleep. One night at about 1 a.m. I awoke to hear crying at the bottom of the stairs. I walked out to investigate and he was sitting on the bottom step. I asked him what was wrong and again he said, "Where's Mom?" I told him she was upstairs and we should go get her. "No," he said, staring at the floor, "there's a bloody head following me." "What?" I asked. He looked up from the floor, stared me right in the eyes, opened his mouth and let out the shrillest blood-curdling scream I have ever heard in my life. It scared the living shit out of me. It was so loud that the whole family got out of their beds to see what was going on. After that I'd never ask him what he was doing downstairs, I'd just take him immediately back to his room.
To celebrate their first year in university, 6 friends went camping in the wilderness. After driving for several hours from the nearest town, they discovered a lagoon, nestled beside a cliff ideal for diving. They set up camp in the woods nearby and spent the evening swimming in the warm, clear water. As the sun sunk below the trees, one of the friends went up to the highest point on the cliff and jumped off, while the other 5 watched. Their laughter slowly subsided as they waited for him to surface. It only took half a minute for them to dive in after their friend. Struggling and sputtering among the reeds in the lagoon, they searched hopelessly for him. Finally, they disentangled themselves and came up, but they never saw their friend again. Heartbroken, they returned to the city and passed a strange and lonely year in which their only solace was the knowledge that they would return to the lagoon to honor the anniversary of their friend's death. A year passed and they returned to the lagoon as a memorial, but as they approached they saw their friend standing there, head bowed. Excitedly they called to him and began running towards him, but he didn't turn. As they got closer they called him more desperately, but still to no avail. With joy, they ran towards him but stopped dead when they saw not 1 but 5 crosses on the waterside.
My girlfriend died. She was in a car accident. My mother woke me up the next morning to tell me. She was a mess and I found myself comforting her instead of processing what she had just told me. After she left, it sunk in. I cried for hours. I started crying because my girl was gone. I kept crying because our last words had been hard ones. A fight over the phone. The funeral was awful. I only glanced at her body. Too much makeup. It made me ill. Later that night I found myself hugging my pillow, unable to sleep. I fumbled for my phone in the dark. I read our last text conversation. Then I wrote her a new message. Me. I'm so sorry, Ipsa. I'll love you forever. I hit send and eventually drifted off to sleep. I woke up to my phone buzzing. I looked at the time. 1:49 a.m. It was a message from her phone. Ipsa, forever? Smile. Who has her phone? I wondered. I was instantly angry. Me, who is this? Ipsa, it's me, Ipsa. I was so angry tears started welling up in my eyes. Me, whoever the hell this is, please. Just stop. Ipsa, it's me, I promise. I'll prove it. Ask me something only I would know. I proceeded to grill her with question after question. The sun was up before I was convinced. But it was undoubtedly her. She said she couldn't tell me where she was, but that it was amazing and she was happy. She said it was against the rules to talk to me, but that she couldn't help it. That made me smile. She said she couldn't call, but that she would continue to text me whenever she could. For months we conversed via text messages, usually late at night. We mostly reminisced about old times. She refused to share any details about her new life. I didn't want to pry. I was just happy to read her messages. Then she told me I should start dating again. I told her no. We started arguing. Ipsa, I don't think we should text each other anymore. Me, what are you talking about? Ipsa, this was a bad idea. I'm sorry. Me, no. Wait. I'm sorry. I can't lose you again. Ipsa, I love you. Ipsa, goodbye. I texted her every day for weeks begging her to write me back. I soon found myself in the grips of depression. I had lost her all over again. One night I awoke from a dream I was having about Ipsa only to find myself alone in bed. My room was cold and dark. I had left the window open. I grabbed my phone to check the time. 1:49 a.m. 0 messages. I would have cried, but I was all cried out. I heard a faint shuffling noise coming from inside the closet in front of my bed. I looked up. And there she was. She slowly emerged from behind my hanging shirts and jackets, pushing them aside. Even in the dark, her delicate features were unmistakable. Her dark, wavy hair bounced as she walked slowly toward me. Ipsa, I whispered. My heart was pounding. She didn't say a word. She just stared into my eyes with a sideways smile on her beautiful face. The moon coming in from my window made her pale skin glow. Suddenly, my phone vibrated on my bed. I jumped. She stopped and looked down at it. Maybe she can't speak, I thought. I picked up the phone and read the message. Ipsa, that's not me.